it up.
This is channel 253. Beep, boop, boop.
On this episode of the Grit and Grain Podcast.
It was the beer industry that made glass. They made caps. They made the beer.
Yeah.
They had all this industry that started with the beer.
Oh, yeah. You needed glass. You needed all these materials for the beer. Mm-hmm. And they just went from there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot to thank the beer industry for.
That's true.
Welcome to the Grit and Grain Podcast, where we explore and celebrate the craft beer industry, community, and history in Tacoma, Washington, and surrounding Pacific Northwest areas. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's get to it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grit and Grain Podcast, coming to you guys from Tacoma, Washington, at the historic Parkway Tavern. My name is Matt McLaren. I'm here, of course, with Ron Swerner.
Hello.
How's it going, Ron?
Great.
Great. Me too.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And then Sean Jackson, of course.
Oh, yeah. Holy baby Jesus. Hells yes. All the things today. Pointing in the right direction.
That's perfect.
Yep. Stars
Can't let one
aligned.
episode go.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys can't tell by Sean's reaction, today's going to be an awesome day because we are going to talk to some fantastic royalty in this industry. Sean, who are we talking to today, man?
Pretty much the inventors of beer. It's Will and Mari Kemper. Yeah. Legends. Yeah, absolutely. Demigods? Sure.
We don't know if we can go that far.
Sorry in advance for
Just
2 hours
beer.
of that.
Just our
Tone it down.
I'm trying. I swear I'm trying.
Tear down, Turbo.
Thank you both for being here. We're kind of rounding out our first year of this whole thing, and it's been like a wildly exciting year and a lot of fun. And getting to talk to you two about your contributions to this industry will be a great way to cap it off.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Super
Really.
excited.
And thank you, Phaedra, for mentioning it.
Yeah, of course. We owe Phaedra quite a bit, actually. she's pretty behind the scenes, but yeah, we owe a lot of our success to Phaedra. Before we get into all of the stuff, what are you guys drinking?
Oh, this is the Japanese-style lager.
Your guys' Japanese-style lager?
Yes, and I don't know if you know the story on it, but
No, please
it
tell.
was told that it was Asian lager, but that's the name for Din Tai Fung. This is actually Japanese-style lager, and it's the name that we use for everybody other than Din Tai Fung
Got it.
restaurants.
Which is super interesting since they were nominated in last year's tournament of Peaks and Pints tournament of lagers as the Asian, not the Japanese.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
because
so many
people
people had
going
it.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. They have 4 restaurants in Seattle and 2 now in Portland.
and possibly a couple hundred in Southeast Asia. They cover those areas. So how we did this, they approached us to do their house beer, and it was wonderful. As a brewer, what you're able to do is you go at restaurants and you drink beer and you taste beer and you discuss it. And so we're drinking Asahi, Kira, and all these other Southeast Asia beers. And so we had a sense of it. And then we invited up to the brewery, and our brewery in Bellingham. I'm sorry,
No, it was
in Burlington.
Burlington.
They're very similar anyway. So what happened was they came up here, to the brewery, and we had a beer called Helles, which is a German light beer. Wonderful beer. Possibly my favorite style of beer.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, the Helles, they liked that. They liked it. And so we completely changed from what we were tasting before, and we made more of a Helles. We put in a bit of flaked rice to make it that Southeastern Asian influence somewhat. But the point is, it's more of a Helles, and how we did. So it's kind of a unique beer.
Yeah. Have you guys done a lot of that, like sort of house beers for
it's
for
fun.
places like that?
That was our first experience.
I was
going to
say,
really
yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah.
It was a lot of fun, for sure.
Well, smart move on their part.
I know. That's
Tell me about it.
I don't think I've been giving Din Tai Fung enough credit for their beer prowess.
Yeah, and it's available, actually making a plug here, but it is available at the baseball field because Din Tai Fung has an outlet there.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
so go get your Din Tai Fung dumpling and then pick up a beer because
This
it's
episode, this episode was brought to you guys by Din Tai Fung.
Well, when we need that corporate
I
sponsorship,
was
we
gonna
know
say,
who's
can't
going to
beat
knock
those
on
green
it.
beans, man.
Hey.
Sean, are we all drinking that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
additionally, we've got some alt beer too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Ooh.
Which is
Oh, that.
incredible style of beer, and it's one I know how I feel about it. Like in the beginning of the craft brewing, there's a lot of amber ales. You get your Irish reds, a little more American hoppier reds, but as far as a German style,
Yeah, well, that's the beauty. We have to do research,
Yeah.
Lord. So you go to Dusseldorf, and
You just pop over.
and taste the beers.
Well, actually, our hop dealer took us over there, and we met the brewmaster, but he didn't think he spoke good enough English, so his young assistant brewer interpreted for us, and they took us into their basement, and it was just amazing. They had the big cement tanks, which were kreuzening tanks, and I don't know if you guys know what the kreuzening is. Go ahead, you tell
Well,
them.
basically, it's just overflowing onto the floor, literally.
But
They
what
go-
is kreuzening? That's what I want you to tell people.
For our listeners.
Yeah.
Well, kreuzen is just a degree of activity in fermentation, so that's what
and
you have.
Let me tell you, they had quite a degree of fermentation going on. I actually took photographs, which I've recently deleted.
If people try to
was
picture
so
it, it's the big, thick,
amazing.
foamy stuff that happens
Yeah.
when beer is fermenting very actively. That's what kreuzen is.
And it was an old brewery, so you're down there under the pipes and all kinds of stuff.
In the
but-
bunker.
Yeah, and talking to the brewers and just a style, Spalthops in particular for the Dusseldorf. Oh, that's big there. But yeah,
Yeah.
Is that a long-lasting relationship with them?
I'm
Do you
sorry, what?
continue to
The Fusion fellows?
Yeah.
No, we were there. We still have our hop dealer, though,
Yeah.
Rudy. And we still order our hops from Germany with him. He's a small boutique hop dealer his family has done it for over 150 years or something.
Holy smokes.
And he's got interesting stories. So, but I
get him
won't
on
go
the
I
into
was
it
gonna
right
say, why don't you text us his number?
We'll do some research.
Well, we got to know Rudy because
Weiermans.
Thomas Weierman introduced us about 20 years ago to Rudy.
Yeah.
And apparently they went to school together, Thomas and Rudy.
Really?
And and Rudy's just a wonderful guy to be there. We went to Heidelberg. That's where around Heidelberg.
Rudy lives near Heidelberg.
So I had to go there.
Yeah,
And,
actually, Heidelberg is a great city to visit. You don't hear about it much, but we actually went to a brewers meeting while we were there. It was pretty
yeah,
funny.
they had their annual meeting, and we were treated very well.
Yeah.
Did any of them know you? Like
No.
from
Just
no?
Rudy.
Just Rudy.
you got Rudy, and then you got the Weierman family. Like,
Yeah.
are you selected as a German youth to have to go to a brewing academy at some point? Is that what's going on? Like, you're at the age, you're 10 now. It's time to go learn about being a master brewer.
Oh yeah.
Well, it is a big deal in Germany.
Yeah.
They have a very intense, even if you're a salesperson, the intensity of the education that you have to go through. I mean, you all probably would love it. No.
Sure would. It's the
Yeah.
nerdy stuff we're here for.
Yeah, but it is, and even if you're not, if you're just an owner, you take engineering classes and that kind of thing. I mean, it's very, very good education for beer.
Yeah, for us, more than 90% of the malt we use comes from Weirmann, and we try other malts literally around the United States, all around. But for us and the beers we do, the Weirmann malt is the best. We've even tried other German malts, doing that. But the Weirmann malt for us, gee, if you have something that works, don't push it for things that don't work as well.
What sort of like benefits have you? I mean, is it just like a utilization thing, or you just get the more traditional flavor that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, that goes to a lot of it. What my philosophy of brewing is that most all malts are capable of wonderful, wonderful flavors coming out of it. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, you have what I refer to as the tag-alongs. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of the brewing process is so involved. There's so many steps involved. And each step should be addressed individually, but in compilation there, you have your total product.
Right.
So your beer's the makeup of both bad and good materials. And so your raw materials, once again, malt, that's keen. And so it has the Weirmann malt. It doesn't have so much of the negative aspects that I would tend to disregard. Gotcha. But when I talk about raw materials, the other thing I want to go back to is water. It's absurd. It's absurd to think you can make good beer with bad water.
Sure.
Yeah.
And some of the water components, the chemistry, that has to be addressed. And a lot of folks don't do it as well as they could, or else they just slough it off. So, once again, how can you make good beer with bad water?
Yeah.
Man, if only someone had a chemical engineering degree.
Well,
it's got to be somebody.
We are fortunate that we do have very nice water here in the Northwest.
Oh, yeah.
Will says it's some of the softest water.
It is about the softest water I've ever come across.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
certainly in America, but Europe, Asia, South America, Australia, it's just exceptionally soft. And so what we have to do for all of ours, it's a palate. It's a clean palate. And so what we have to do is, first of all, you look at the style of beer you're doing. Pilsner or Helles or whatever, and so you figure out how you adjust the water for that, as opposed to having to reduce or extract material from the water. Sure. And so that's so it's wonderful, and that gives us a clean palate that we adjust accordingly for the brewing salts to make it hopefully about as good as it can get.
Oh yeah.
Will, when you were getting your engineering degree, is that when you met Mari?
No,
it's actually
afterwards.
shortly after.
Shortly after?
But I was the problem because I'm the one that said to Will, gee, you need a hobby and you like beer. Why don't you
Every
make
wife's last
beer?
words before a lifetime.
And that was the beginning of the end. You know?
You think you're being so nice and supportive, and 40 years later,
You really need to go to the garage for longer periods of time.
Exactly.
Oh, that's.
I guess if any husband has a success story to point towards, though, it's going to be yours, Will.
What did bring you to Washington State?
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, what brought us here?
Yeah. Because you were in Boulder,
We
right?
met in Boulder,
Yeah.
and then I'm a dancer by training. So my dancing partner, one of the dancers that I danced with, she was from the Northwest. And so she said to us, why don't you come up and then we can have, we can start a dance company up here. It was on Bainbridge Island where we settled. And but unknown to us at the time, we decided to do it, and then I was pregnant and had twins. So the whole dance thing never got too far. Yeah. And instead, we ended up starting Thomas Kemper Brewery on Bainbridge Island.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's start there.
Just open the door.
Thank you. Great segue.
Yeah.
Because this is something like, before Matt says that we talk about a lot. a lot, referencing Thomas Kemper and the beginning of, kind of Washington brewing roots. And it's a big deal. And would love to talk about that.
Definitely. I'm always amazed when I read the articles, some of these articles that I brought, I read it, and it was like at the time that Thomas Kemper opened, apparently there were only 26 breweries, craft breweries, in the United States. They were called microbreweries at the time.
And Washington State had like 8 or 9 of them as well.
Well, no, not that many,
Yeah,
but they
quite a
did have.
few, yeah.
There were like 5 or 6 of us, and we were actually worked together, whereas the other ones were in isolated places. Let's say California probably had the most, and then Oregon had. Well, no, when we opened Widmer Brothers, they were one of the only ones. And then there was Hart, which was Pyramid. And there was, what you call it? Help me out, guys.
Well, there's
there
Red,
was
Red Hook, and then
Thomas Kemper, Red Hook,
Mike Hale.
Mike Hale, Hale's Ales, and
Burt Grant.
Burt
And
Grant.
Burt,
Grant's
yeah,
Ales.
Burt, yeah.
Yes, and that was the 6 of us, and we worked together on different events and things like that. And we had to work with government, the state liquor board, because at the time the state liquor board didn't know what to do with us. The rules were for bigger breweries.
So I have to tell the story when we had Thomas Kemper and Paulsbo, and we were going to do a tap room and sell food there and such. And so Mari took a trip down to the liquor control board and talking about that. They said, no, you can't do it because it doesn't say in the law of whatever existence that you could. And she said, well, it doesn't say you can't either. Oh, okay.
Well, just write us a letter, they said. And I did.
Yeah.
And that was it.
So,
And they changed the rule. And then that's when in Seattle, in Ballard, they were able to do theirs.
yeah.
Was after that. So.
Just a nicely worded letter.
Yeah.
And tap
But
takeovers.
it was
takeovers
like
were
that
on.
because there wasn't a whole lot going. There weren't enough even to look around the United States to see what were those states doing.
Oh, there's no precedent at this time.
Yeah,
So it's just kind
exactly.
of, okay, let's see what happens.
Yes.
Because you could have had the GABF in the parking lot out back. Come on down, everybody.
Well, we did used to have a great Oktoberfest in Paulsville. I don't know if anyone ever went to that.
Oh, yeah,
one.
because that's where the root beer was.
That's right. In Paulsville. Yeah, and that was super fun. And we were just grilling brats on a grill. It was nothing big. We had a tuba group playing. We had dancers, and it was a fun Oktoberfest in those days.
And you were brewing lagers then, too.
We were.
Yeah.
We had a lot of lagers.
Yeah, we were doing. I've always liked lager beers, and my palate, I think, is more so towards lager beers, and so that's kind of where we've been. But yeah, we did a lager. It had a blueberry essence to it. People talk about it. Oh yeah, okay. That was
the Helles.
Yeah, that's an ester that creates that certain profile. And when I first started to work with the brewery, so I was working with the National Collection of Yeast Culture out of England, and trying to decide upon a yeast strain, not knowing that much about yeast. And they suggested this one. So what I'm getting at is it's a combination of particular yeast. It's also a combination of production conditions as far as fermentation temperatures, and we were using Cascade hops. And so that had a certain fruitiness as well, and in combination, like I said, with the particular esters, so that made the blueberry essence of that particular beer. So maybe someday at Chuckanut we'll do it again, because I know the yeast strain, I know the recipe, but one thing at a time.
Yeah.
That particular beer was my jam when I got up here.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, some of the segues in the craft beer, when I was young, taking me off the
That's
king
neat.
of beer, freaking,
Right.
is
Right.
I love that beer.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, that's
I think
so
I've
cool.
admitted to the Pete's Wicked Strawberry Blonde.
Oh yeah.
I drank my weight in that.
Pete
but-
is still in the industry. He came to visit us at Chuckanut, and we got to meet him. And he's like one of the. Oh, he had his place like years ago before, like at least 3 or 4 years before Thomas Kemper came out. I don't really remember what he's doing, but I'm pretty sure he's still in the industry.
Last I knew, as of about a year ago, he was going down to Brazil and in beer judgings.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
That's
rough.
what he does.
Poor buddy.
Yeah.
Do a GoFundMe for the poor guy.
It was interesting. Also, the other person that used to come visit us was Fritz Maytag.
Yay!
You all
Goodness.
know his brewery.
Of course.
And
I know. Had some
he
unfortunate news
he
this
sold his years ago, and the reason he was in Bellingham was there was some kind of boat builder there that he was buying he bought a boat from, and he came in and visited us, and then he came again because his son-in-law wanted to get one of those boats, and he came and visited again. It was so sweet. He even sent us a thank you note for showing us around our brewery, showing him around the brewery and that kind of thing. It was very cool.
That's awesome.
It's fun.
And super topical.
Yeah, I was going to say
Current
that
news.
Anchor announced this week that they're pulling out a lot out of all distribution outside of
Really?
California. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Which is crazy.
No more Christmas ale up here.
I know.
Until break
I
time.
hadn't heard that.
I know.
One of our lovely couples, Parky and Mary, gave us a 2012 our special Christmas ale
Oh,
that
right.
they thought we would share around today.
Oh, my goodness. Really?
Yeah,
Really? Wow, that is so interesting.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
excited
Yeah.
now.
So
But
many
he
roundabout
hasn't-
things today. I love
I don't
this.
think he's owned it for quite some time. I can't remember who he sold to.
No, he hasn't. But it was just, it's, such an iconic
Yeah.
beer, and
Yeah,
for
and that's
everybody
the
to,
one we all think about in those days.
And actually, so I went to so many brewery events in the 1980s and 1990s, and Fritz was always speaking, and he was such a dynamic, positive person.
Yeah.
By far the best speaker at all these old brewing conferences.
Sure.
Great.
I imagine you have to be enthusiastic if you're going to lift the entire craft
Yeah.
beer industry up on a single beer style.
It's so true. Yeah.
So you eventually parted ways with Andy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Andy Thomas.
Like a lot of not too many things last forever, and business considerations, and so it never continued as a result. It got.
Yeah,
It
once
wasn't
we left,
positive,
it
and,
kinda
and
had-
why we left was we had a non-compete, and so we signed a non-compete on the expectation of more funding that never came back. By the way, but we had that non-compete, and at that time, Thomas Kemper was sold from Colorado to California up and through the Northwest.
Alaska,
So
Yeah.
that's why we had to go
California,
elsewhere.
Oregon. Yeah, we had to leave our homeland, I always say.
East Coast or bust.
And that was when we went to North Carolina to, Durham, North Carolina for Weeping Radish, which was one of the first brew pubs in North Carolina. Now, North Carolina is a hub of
is.
craft beer, the craft beer industry. But at that time, they were the only ones, I think. Because we even talked to someone in something in North Carolina. Another.
Greensleeves on raw.
No.
Greensboro.
That's it.
Damn.
Greensboro, North Carolina. He wanted to start some brew pubs. If you count up all the people we talked to that wanted to start a brew pub, you would be amazed.
Yeah, no, thinking about there's a time everybody wanted to start a brewery. And
Sure.
so I was working with, as a consultant. I tell people maybe 5 to 10% of the people I've ever talked to actually go through and start a brewery.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How many of those people? How many of those 5 to 10% would you say are actually successful in their venture?
That's the
1 to
other
2.
Yeah.
1 to 2. That's right.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
the 5 to 10.
Exactly.
It's tough, man.
Yeah. Like
No,
Will.
maybe about half are still ongoing type of
No,
thing.
I don't think so.
Mari, ever the optimist.
I know. I'm really much more. He's always so optimistic. I'm the practical person. No, but I was thinking one time he went to this woman who wanted to do a brew pub on Wall Street
Oh yeah, it was literally.
in New York City.
So she owned the building literally 2 blocks away from the Trade
Trade
Center.
Center.
And so
Oh,
this is
wow.
about 7-8 story building that her family has had for I don't know how long. But the fascinating thing that was she wanted to do a brew pub there. Going through the system there, so this was in the 1990s,
Early
possibly.
90s.
But they had pipes there that were wooden, so square pipes. You know, it's fascinating. I
And
didn't
they
know they had
built it.
that in
We never
downtown
knew
New
that
York
they
City.
had wooden.
Wow.
That's how it used to be, apparently.
Sure.
Yeah, it was better than iron, I guess. Right?
Well,
Yeah, or lead.
Could have been my mind.
lead. Yeah. And then at one point he was talking with someone that wanted to do a brewery out in the Pacific Ocean on Marietta Islands.
no, in the Virgin
Oh.
Islands.
And then the Virgin
So
Islands.
we were do that, and then a hurricane came through. So things
that was the end of that.
happened.
Yeah. But some of the projects were fascinating, you know. And when Will did the Dock Street, because after North Carolina we left, we went to Philadelphia, and Will put in the first brewery in a high-rise
Whoa.
in Philadelphia.
So it was like, I don't know, it's like a 30, 40 story building. It's, you know, you see the triangular building in the Philadelphia skyline, that was it. So it was on the base floor. And dealing with that, you know, it's a matter of steam systems and all that, and piping, trying to work with that. So that was
Exhaust
interesting.
was a big deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. So having to deal with that and the restrictions, because I'm used to being a very hands-on person, putting in lines or whatever, electric and such, and so I was very limited in doing that. But it was a wonderful setting, truly in the middle of their commerce area. So the pub itself was, you know, just a nice pub. But it got to the point though that what happened was that. These three-piece suits would walk out. Excuse me, sir. Do you have a glass under your coat? So
People were, you know,
They would be
taking the
ripping off
logo
the glasses,
glasses
like-
and whatever they can get their hands on. Yeah.
so that was a big thing that somebody, you know, they're getting ripped off like crazy. But anyway,
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's why she didn't open that brewery in Wall Street.
Well,
that's
it
another
did that
one.
one. Oh no, that was a different one. But the Dock Street opened, and then they made multiple brew pubs around the Northeast. And I'm having a blank. Someone was just telling me, oh, it was Nick Fennell who sells our firemen to us. He was actually one of their brewers at Dock Street, and Dock Street tried to open something in D.C. and apparently it lasted like 2 months, and then they had to close it down. This also happens in the brewing industry, just so you guys know. It's not always a piece of cake.
Nonsense.
Just in case you want to try it, you know, beware.
I know.
But-
Sorry, Cole.
But then she did shut down. They did shut them all down, and then they reopened them again in different locations. And they're doing quite well now in Philadelphia. There's
nice.
2 of them. Yeah. 2 or 3.
We're going to take a super quick break, but we will be right back. So stick around.
Hey everyone, this is producer Doug at Channel 253. We have a big event coming up. Join Grit and Grain and everyone at Channel 253 on June 29th at the Press Room on Opera Alley for an awesome night of podcasting. Here's the plan. At 5:30, we'll get started with the Grit and Grain podcast. The beer crew will talk about Tacoma and its beer history. At 6:20 or so, the interchangeable white ladies will grace us with some hot takes and generally keep us laughing. Then at 7 o'clock, Nate Bowling will host an honorary Nerd Farmer episode 200 with some of his greatest guests, including Matt Driscoll, Jenna Hanchard, Will James, and Melissa Santos. Tickets are free, but we ask you to reserve them online at channel253.com. We hope to see you there.
Welcome back. I'm on it. I got it. Yeah, despite everything. Thank you guys for hanging out, of course, with Will and Mari here. And then a quick shout out, of course, to Doug. Every week. Yay, Doug. Our wonderful producer who makes this sound awesome every week. And then, I know you guys heard it on the break as usual, but please do go support Channel 253. It's amazing. They do all kinds of wonderful stuff, including live events, which we're going to do at the end of the month. But yeah, channel253.com/membership if you want to go support those guys and stay connected to Tacoma because it's just the best. We were talking about your guys' world travels on the break, and we should keep doing that.
Yeah. Well, we've gone a lot of places around the world brewing beer. It's pretty amazing. You know, people say, "Oh, that's so great," and I'm like, "Well, not always."
Let's hear some of those not always stories.
There's been things. Well, even when we went to Mexico, they said, "Oh yeah, we're getting close now, so come on down." They get us an apartment. We move in. We take the first morning. We walk down, and there's barely anything there. I hadn't even really started building the building.
Oh no!
And we're like, "Whoa, what is going on?" But it was pretty amazing how quickly that building went up, and it was a huge building. And that was very fun. Will is good with Spanish. He became fluent with Spanish and was dreaming in Spanish.
Whoa.
So that was a help. And then we had all kinds of adventures while we were there.
Were you guys consulting down there? Is that why you were traveling?
No, it was a contract. So, the first one was a contract for a couple of years, and then I consulted for later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The contract was to design the brewery and oversee setting it up.
And as a consultant, working at a consultant around that time, but as a consultant, what happens is you structure it, you set it up, and then you become obsolete. You become
obsolete.
Not obsolete, but
they don't really need you. You've trained everybody on the recipes. You've given them the recipes,
and they certainly don't want to pay the money that I needed.
Sure, but you were worth.
Yeah, that's more of a bottom line.
Yeah. How was the water?
In Mexico?
It wasn't so bad. There's treatment aspects you can do. It wasn't nearly as good, and I don't think my focus was as great then as it is now on that. It takes experience to really appreciate, that
good water chemistry.
I'm sorry, what?
Good water chemistry.
Good water chemistry, Right. So one story was that we were working with the malt is very interesting down there. And
how so?
Well, first of all, it's the large companies that manufacture. So there were no small malting houses down there. So we were working with actually we were very much associated with Cuauhtémoc. They make Tecate, Dos Equis, Bohemia. And so working through them, we were able to get their malt source. And that sounds good, so the dark malt for Dos Equis and things like that. Well, one day I'm in the malt house and I hear this kind of a sound. And I go over there.
You know what that is?
I went
you
over.
guys don't know?
I went over there and I opened up the lid, and it was churning with weevils out of this malt.
Whoa!
So that
I did not know that sound.
They reproduce quite quickly under certain conditions. So that made an interesting situation, but
Yeah, that's one of the stories. From Mexico.
I mean, literally. I mean, I'm not saying, oh yeah, there's a weevil. No, visually, it was churning. It was so plentiful.
I think I don't know if you know, but years ago when we would get the grains from, let's say, India, because I was a chef, so in a vegetarian restaurant. So occasionally, we would get like basmati rice or something, and then sometimes you would look in your bag and it would be moving. And that it was the same thing. It's something that comes with, I think,
with the
that,
territory.
With tropical climates and such.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Now, I also have to add...
So you couldn't use it because it wasn't vegetarian anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Well, there's another...
That was the thing.
Start about vitamins?
Oh, no, don't tell.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with the...
I know. But that's
That's okay.
That's okay.
We're open, good story-minded.
Oh, well, it was just one of my travels to India, and I was at a place in the middle of nowhere, and they brought me my curry, and there was a fly in my curry. And I brought the manager over, and I said, "There's a fly in my curry." And she said, "Vitamins."
Awesome.
Yeah.
But I, talking about Mexico and the beers that are manufactured there. So it's interesting. There's a wonderful beer, Bohemia, but you have to have it in Mexico. Beer, especially the best beers, are perishable. That's why, the experience of drinking German beers in America, no. And the quality, it's like, a kind of food type of thing, transportation, time, all sorts of factors that can destroy the pinnacle of flavor. So you look at going at the brewery there, and it's interesting because when they do Carta Blanca, Dos Equis, they're rather casual. Heck, on the packaging line, you see guys, they might even be reading the newspaper. But when they make Bohemia, everybody's focused. And if you go to a place and have Bohemia in Monterrey, Mexico, it's just exceptional.
Yeah. I love that Mexico is like, you talk about it like it's the destination for beer drinkers, and we all talk about Belgium and Germany and the Czech Republic, and Mexico never gets brought up. But even now, there's like this crazy bustling industry that's coming up.
It's the top selling beer, I think, in America, or one of the top. Is
Modelo
Mexican.
Light now. So
And we just happened to we have the Mexican style lager and the Mexican style dark lager. That's new this year.
We're popping these.
Yeah.
We're going to do some research.
But, since we were there, I feel like, we know it from the source, kind of. And it's...
There's another research trip.
Yeah.
Well, it was living
For you
there.
guys, it would be most definitely. Enjoy.
That source thing is so true, like closer to home. But my favorite was just actually having a Heineken overseas.
It's so different.
Oh my Jesus God, the most different that I can think of anything I've ever drank before.
Same with Carlsberg at Elephant Beer.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Very different in Denmark.
Actually having it in Denmark.
Yeah.
We've yet to get to Denmark. But the fun thing about Belgium was, if you want to buy some beer, you actually drive your car into a big warehouse that's filled with beer. And then they load your car up, and then you drive out. It is very cool.
So convenient.
Was our little lime station?
It was just really interesting because we didn't realize that's what it was like to buy your beer there.
You mentioned Carlsberg then, and for brewer and science consideration. So after 1900, there was a brewing chemist named Søren Sørensen who developed the novel concept of pH. So if anybody has taken chemistry and where did it come from? It came from trying to make better beer.
Oh, yeah?
And Carlsberg was great in that they shared their information with everyone.
That is interesting societal consideration at that time. what was discovered, the mentality was it should be available to humanity, to other people. So instead of hiding it or trying to get your only personal benefit, is wonderful. It was, it's so giving. That's wonderful.
And actually,
Thankful Carlsberg started in Denmark.
And
Exactly.
there's a lot of that. I don't know if you guys know, but there is a lot about that because what was the woman scientist? Sorry, I've been
Madame
drinking.
Curie?
Madame Curie. She came out of that whole discovery was from the brewing industry, wasn't it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, there were all kinds of things that came out of the brewing industry. And especially when we were down in Mexico, we learned that it was the beer industry that made glass. They made caps. They made the beer.
Yeah.
They had all this industry that started with the beer.
Oh,
Yeah, you needed glass, you needed all these materials for the beer,
Mm-hmm.
and they just went from there. Yeah,
And so we have a lot to thank the beer industry for.
That's true.
More than the obvious.
More than just refreshment.
So more international travels.
So then, so we were in Mexico. Then we tried to start a brewery on the Mississippi at the Dubuque Star, which is Dubuque, Iowa. And if you've ever seen that movie, Take This Job and Shove It, it takes place in the Dubuque Star. Do you guys know about it? Oh, it's a hilarious movie. Anyways, so that project, though, didn't happen. That was one of the ones that didn't work. And then we went down to Tucson, Arizona to try to start something. But that never came to pass. But meanwhile, Will consulted with a group in Istanbul, Turkey. And when they were ready to set up the brew pub, they said, we would love for you to come over. And even though I had a great job, Will said to me, well, this is an experience of a lifetime. And so we went, and it was an experience of a lifetime. We loved Istanbul.
and we're going to some. So we were there several years. We first went to Istanbul in December of 2001.
Yeah, after 9/11.
9/11. So it was an interesting time to go to the Middle East.
Sure.
But wonderful. I mean, for the feeling that you had and the acceptance we had when we were there. I had little Muslim men. They knew I was American. They come over and hug me, and the empathy that they felt is just amazing.
Oh, sure.
And
Very loving.
And so at that time, I say, well, everybody was American in that regard. Then things kind of changed over the years as far as Iraq and all those considerations, and we found ourselves a year, two later, well, when we went to events and such, we were actually from Canada instead of the United States.
No,
It
don't worry.
was much
We're
easier
Canadian.
to avoid a lot of other.
But
No
people
beef
say-
with anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
But people would
Except
say,
the writers of South Park.
they drink beer in Turkey? And we were like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so
Not too far
the
from
story,
where it was invented.
if you look at statistics, and something like 98% of the Turkish population is Islamic, and apparently I'm a part of that. The story is that when I was over there, I had to fill out papers for my employment there. So they asked me my religion. I told them, put down Buddhist. And so I was telling this story with the general manager a year or so later in the car. He said, no, Will, we just decided to put you down as an Islamic because it just makes things easier.
Oh, sure. A little less friction with.
Yeah. So that's how they do things.
But and that first visit, it was a brew pub in an antique building on a teeny tiny street in Istanbul in a very fancy neighborhood, and you can only take trucks into the city of Istanbul between midnight and like 4 a.m. Because the streets are so small,
Right.
And so our work would begin then. And the night that I think it was the refrigeration unit or the compressor up on the roof was coming, and the tanks were coming in a truck outside the city where they had put it in a warehouse to keep it until it was ready to be delivered. And so we went over at about midnight again to check it out. And all of a sudden we see this very colorful truck, with little tchotchkes hanging around the window, and there's, red and blue and yellow on the truck. And then like 8 Bulgarians hop out of the truck, and they put on these harnesses, and we're like, what's going on, And sure enough, these guys are going to carry the tanks down a flight of stairs to the basement where the fermentation room was in this particular brew pub. Wow. And they... there are 8 of them, but 7 of them have the harnesses, and the one is like the cheerleader and the guy leading the gang with the tanks.
Yeah, the rowing team.
Yeah. He's encouraging. You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah, he's like encouraging them, and they're like huffing and puffing, and they're making their way down the stairs. And let me tell you, they carried those, I don't know how much they weighed, but they were like 10 barrels? Or
Yeah, so
7?
each one of those tanks weighed about 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, each tank weighs about 1,000 pounds. They carried it down, and then they go, all right, we're going to take a break. And they go out. They sit down on the, the stoop, the road there, and they pull out cigarettes, and they cigarettes, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how do those guys do that? It was just something else. I must say, I have never
my
seen
people
anything.
right there. Well, those straps too. It's like
It's like.
I remember borrowing one of those. It's like, holy shit, I can move a washer and a dryer by myself. Stack that shit up. Yep. Incredible.
There was
I still would have liked to have seen the stair descent.
Oh,
to
it
the
was
place.
a sight to behold. I had a video of it. I don't know where it's gone, but they did have a crane that put the equipment on the roof. But that was a stunning brew pub, and it lasted for quite some time. It was very modern inside, and just a beautiful old building. But then 2 years, then we left that. We went around Europe on our way back to taste beer, and then 2 years later, they say, we want you to come over and do a craft brewery, but it's a 3-year project, because that first visit was on the European side, but the second visit was on the Asian side, because that's where they were just outside the city limits. There was like an industrial area, and that's where we'll put in the craft brewery.
Yeah, in Istanbul, it's the only city in the world that straddles 2 continents, literally and figuratively. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, but I forgot to tell you about the brew pub. When we did that brew pub, they had hired this Bulgarian man that said he was a brewmaster. And we're like, oh, okay. But the issue was Will, speaking English, had to tell the owner what he wanted to say. Then the owner would speak, who understood English but spoke Turkish, would tell the assistant brewer in Turkish what to do. And then the assistant, who was a Bulgarian, and understood Turkish, would tell the Bulgarian brewmaster what to say.
The first TikTok.
Plays his game of telephone.
I have to say, that guy didn't last that long.
Yeah, to use the term brewmaster, that was
that's what he
rather
said.
casually used.
It was.
I think he might have worked in packaging. Gosh knows what.
In some Bulgarian brewery.
Yeah. I worked in a brewery. That makes me a brewmaster.
Yep.
Or I drink a lot of beer.
Or maybe say-
Will's assistant, the Bulgarian Turkish guy, he would call Will master. I always thought that was so hilarious. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so I don't feel like we're fully done with this international journey. We got a lot of ground to cover, and we haven't even got into the instructional years, right?
Yeah.
But is there we like to call them fuck up stories that you can think of? Possibly for the wrap up of episode 1 here. Doesn't have to be industry related. Like in my case, just head trauma always works. Kind of my go-to. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Can you think of one? This is.
Well, now that you put it like that, come to mind.
What comes to mind?
I know. Being in the beer business has been wonderful, but like anything along the line, whoever you are, it's a matter of fortune and misfortune. That's what happens, and I can think of technical issues. Oh, okay, with Thomas Kemper, we had a yeast problem, not a yeast problem, but a bacteria problem with a bacteria called enterobacter, by the way, which is a word spoiling type of bacteria that occurs. And technically, it's very sensitive to an acidic environment. So I was testing, but we didn't have a lot of money at the time. So I was doing it with pH papers versus a proper meter and such. So we were having issues, and ultimately we contacted the brewers at Rainier. They were wonderful. They were so supportive. And this is the thing too with the large breweries. Boy, they'd love to be able to do their own brewery. But the folks at Rainier, so we're talking 1985, 6, something like that, where we were having the issues. And I don't know, so we had 3-4 of those brewers from Rainier that came over and being excited. Whoa. And they took it back to their lab and said, oh, this is a problem, enterobacter, this particular type, and blah, blah, blah. And it was extremely helpful. Now, after they told me that, then I am now pretty much of an expert on enterobacter because that happened. But it's essentially, wow, you're making bad beer and what's going on, and the technical things you're looking at said, gee, it shouldn't not be that. But that's the other thing as far as relying upon more professional folks, more capability, and they come through, and they. Like I said, two things.
Really
so understanding technical thing, but yeah.
and that was Rainier. Those guys were really great.
They're wonderful. When we had Thomas Kemper, we had folks from Coors come out specifically to visit us because the thought of a craft brewery was exciting at that time.
Yeah,
that's so amazing. Cool. All right, Grit and Grainers, email us at cheers@gritandgrainpodcast.com with your comments, opinions, and 1990 Washington beer jokes, such as what do you call fractionally raised beer? Thomas Kemper root beer. You can subscribe to Grit and Grain on Amazon, Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. And please leave us a review. Also, check us out on Channel 253 and gritandgrainpodcast.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for episode notes, beer news, and diary entries of our mountaintop screams and naked desires to the universe as we have opened our hearts and eaten the vegan bean sprout salads and cleansed our colons and detoxed in the tub 10,000 times and endured a self-help libraries and marinated our souls in the juices of forgiveness and pain and love. And we have come full circle and found that while life is in the details, it's also important not to sweat the small stuff. And we are left with this sort of karmic exhaustion where we just want to hunker down and quit messing around with all the damn ticks and talks and xylophone covers and red wine facials and rainstorms and just shut up and have a stang of Chuckanut Kolsch and sit down with Mari and Will Kemper one more time. If this podcast is not what you expected, please alter expectations. I tried to come up with a funny pun about Chuckanut, but all my ideas were nuts. No such thing as a bad time to visit Tacoma. No such thing as too much barley wine. Tune in next Friday for more sweet chatter. Cheers.
Cheers. You're the poet. I love that.
Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Grit and Grain Podcast wherever you get your social media and catch new episodes every Friday. Cheers.
Channel 253 is a member-supported podcast network. I'm producer Doug Mackey, and I'm asking you to become a member and show your support. Go to channel253.com/membership to join. Thank you. Grit and Grain is part of the Channel 253 podcast network. Check out our other shows: Nerd Farmer, Interchangeable White Ladies, Move to Tacoma, Crossing Division, Citizen Tacoma, What Say You, We Are Tacoma, Flounders B Team, and Taco Man.
This is Channel 253.
Get up.